Yay!
Okay, we're now live and let me hit record. So, all right, welcome everybody. Hi. And this is our part 2 on tips and advice on how to survive a divorce through the holidays. If you saw us on Monday, you know that Teresa and I did a how to survive divorce through the holidays. That was our part 1. And we had such a great response that Teresa and I were inspired to do a part 2. And we reached out to bring some other amazing people onto the show as well for our part 2 to give even more insight and more advice and different perspectives. So, welcome, Nancy and Victoria. Thank you for being here with us. So, Teresa and I kind of introduced ourselves on the last show, but I'll do a quick introduction of me. And so, hi, everybody. I'm Siobhan Olivero, and I'm an attorney. I do divorce, family law. I am also a certified divorce coach and a certified life and success coach as well. So, all kinds of experience bringing to you guys on surviving divorce through the holidays. And Teresa, you want to give a quick introduction of yourself again?
Hi, ladies. Thank you so much for joining us. Teresa Trigas-Pfeferle. I'm a real estate broker in New Jersey. So I'm involved in buying and selling of real estate here on the East Coast. I'm also a real estate consultant. I can help anyone, anywhere, identify what their real estate needs are, help them identify realtors, and be involved in the process of vetting who the right realtor is for them to reach their outcomes. I also have been divorced twice. So, not only having lived the holidays as a divorcing or divorced woman, I'm now in a blended family. We have 5 children. So, his, hers, and ours, it can get very complicated at times.
Right. So, brings every aspect to us on how to get through the holidays, even from the blended family. And so I know we didn't talk about that on part 1. So maybe if there's any tips you can give today on getting into the blended family side of it and how to handle that, we can talk about that today. So Nancy, welcome. Why don't you give an introduction of who you are?
Yeah, I'm Nancy Benitez, Nancy B for short, and I am a single men's guide. I work with single men to help them find their ideal partner by becoming the best version of themselves. And what I've been through 2 divorces as well, and I now am in a relationship where we also have a blended family, and it's really beautiful the way that my ex-husband and I co-parent our daughter, which is, I feel, really important. So yeah, in helping men be their advocate and understand women, I help them become better men for not only all the women out there, but for their kids, for everybody involved. So thank you for having me.
Amazing. Thank you for being here. I look forward to hearing what you have to say. And Dr. Victoria.
Yes,
Hi,
thank you so
welcome.
much. Yes, I'm so excited to be here, provide some insight if I can. Who I am is I am a therapist. I work a lot with parents and people about to become parents. I work a lot with blended families and a lot with people who are trying to be the best step parent that they can be, especially when, that's one of the, I think, hardest roles if you're in that. What I do is I do work with people who don't have resources. So I have lots of tips and tricks and strategies and really do support parents there. But one of my biggest focuses is to support parents who say, I have it all. I have all the resources, read all the books, had all the coaches. Why am I still stuck? And so I am the secret Spanx to you. And I also am divorced. I do not have children. And I I moved for my marriage and moved my business and geographically. And then after my divorce, moved back to New York and rebuilt. And lots of experiences there, right, to share about in terms of how to get back on your feet and have a different mindset. So my hope is to be able to contribute in that way. And I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for being here. Ladies, I am so honored and blessed that you all have agreed to do this with me. And I hope that we are going to bring even more value to everybody watching and to those that watch this later on once it starts to replay as well, and that we can bring some, hopefully some peace and some coping ways to cope to get through these trying times. These can be emotional times, stressful times. And then add to that, if you're going through a divorce, and if it's, and for Teresa, and I think Nancy, you said you were divorced twice as well. And so, remembering that, not that it gets easier the more times that you do it, it's hard every time, but, I've only been divorced once, but, it's tough, and it's so overwhelming when you're going through it the first time. And, Teresa and I talked on our first show on Monday, and we talked about, creating new traditions for you and for your children and the new family that you have. And I talked about how, Christmas doesn't have to happen on Christmas, right? It's not about the day that it happens. It's about the time that you're spending with your children or with your family, or, those important in your life, and that's another way. And so really, the advice is just to be flexible, and to figure out the new things that you can do and that you can create to yourself. Teresa talked about using the time, if it's a time when you're alone, to do something adventurous or do something that you've always wanted to do, and use that as your time. And then we talked a little bit about self-care. So just kind of a quick recap of some of the things that Teresa and I talked about on Monday. And so I'd want to start with either you, Nancy, or Dr. Victoria, either of you that want to start. What other advice do you have for somebody on coping and surviving the holidays?
Do you want to go first?
Yeah, absolutely.
Me? Sure. Should I talk from my own experience or just tips for anybody?
Tips for anybody, but then we'd like to kind of focus on like divorce and, maybe getting through with the children. I know that Dr. Grinman work with, the children and the families. And so things that you've seen as well, and maybe how to help the children cope too, right? Because it affects the children as well, and can be really emotional for them and can be new for them. So if you want to bring in that aspect too, of how can they help the children get through this time and minimize emotions and stress for them, that would be great too.
Yeah, awesome. One of the biggest things that came to mind as we're chatting about kids is when it comes to divorce or separation, or during that time, regardless of where you are in the process, your own emotions really do get in the way. I work with families who some of the parents are remarried and they celebrate Christmas, others celebrate other things, and there becomes a battle of what's more important, what they used to do versus, when they were younger versus now they're older, they want to do other things. So there's all these things that come up. And my biggest tip, and of course, oftentimes we need help with this and it's hard to do on our own, is to really learn how to deal with your self-mastery we talk about, to deal with your own self around it before making decisions or bringing it to your kids. Lots of parents have this thing, like they'll ask the kids, how do you feel about it? What do you want? And then we put the pressure on the kid to make the decision. Kids feel everything. I have this divine, opportunity to actually talk to a lot of the kids whose parents I work with, and they will tell you, I know what mom is doing. I know what dad is doing when he asks me that, and I feel bad because I don't want to make dad feel bad. And, I want to make sure that mom is okay. So we just have to deal with, what's going on for us, and make sure that you're making decisions from a place of really thinking about what's going to benefit children, which is often different than what you think on the outside.
Yeah.
It's so hard as a parent in that situation when your kids are going back and forth and you have no control as to what's happening behind closed doors when they go, right? Like, it's so hard to understand how to manage that without involving the kids. Like from experience, right? Like, I remember those moments of asking my son, do you want to go? Do you feel safe? If you don't feel safe, you don't have to go. But still, like, leaving some margin for him to say to me yes or no. It's like really so hard. So I so am empathetic for people in those situations trying to figure out how to manage that. And I also think men and women both, they lose their partner when they get divorced, and they no longer have that partner to rely on if they're not amicable when it comes to situations around the kids. And so then parents tend to look for the kids to replace some of those things that the partner did, until they get like settled and centered.
Which
Yeah.
leads you back to exactly what you probably shared in the first segment, which is the self-care piece is really, and it looks different ways, but the self-care involves being able to look over here and say, what's really going on for me? Like, what's the truth about what's happening for me?
Right. And that importance that we talked about of finding your tribe, but finding that right tribe, that correctly supportive tribe that we talked about on Monday, because as we talked about, there's a good tribe and a not so good tribe. The really supportive people that are the right support, and then the people that mean well but aren't the best support for us during those times. And I think an important point for what Teresa brought up, when dealing with the kids and the divorce, is, there's certainly a line that I think you have to address with the kids if it's been a situation where safety was an issue before, or where there was domestic violence, or where there was those types of issues, because I think you do want to make sure that your children are safe. But I can tell you that, as a divorce attorney, what I see a lot of times happening is that those things were never an issue. And then somehow, some way, there's something that the other parent does that the other parent just doesn't like in parenting styles or in discipline styles. And now it's, well, you don't have to go over there if you don't feel safe because one parent believes in spanking and one parent doesn't, or in discipline. And so now they're trying to pull it in that way. So I think you've got to monitor where those lines are, just because the other parent has a different parenting style doesn't make them wrong, and it doesn't make the child unsafe. And so I think if there's a legitimate safety concern, I think for Teresa, you're right. You have to ask about those things. You have to make sure your children are feeling safe. But outside of that, if it's not, and I'm using the term purposely, a legitimate safety issue in going over there, then you have to foster that. And that's where, and I get it, because I was there too. I did the same thing with my son. Do you want to go? And, and I think to what Dr. Grinman was saying is that sometimes I think parents don't realize what we're doing to the children, right? It's almost that subconscious. We think that we're just trying to take into account the children's feelings, where the kids are going to feel like they're put in the middle, right? Even though that may not be our outward intent. But and so it's like, well, you don't want to go if you don't have to go, you don't want to go, whatever, all those things, when you're trying to appease the children and make them happy, versus you've really got to foster that relationship and should say.
Well, it's funny because as a real estate broker, I observe many people saying, well, we have to bring the kids to the house and see how the kids feel about it. And you look at it, and as an observer, it's so easy to say, what do how the kids feel about it have to do with what's best for your family? Right? Because the kids will adjust, give them a small amount of time, and they're going to find friends in the new neighborhood, and things are they're going to be like miraculously like thrilled that you moved them, but it's so hard when you're stuck in the emotions of what's happening at the moment, and like amplify that over the holidays.
And kids feel that emotion, right? They feel that emotion and they feel that stress. And so I think that sometimes we just have to, that fake it till you make it, right? You just have to put on that face and put on that front end, not show the emotion to your children that you're going through and that you're experiencing. And you've got to put on the smile, and you've got to put on the fun times and say, this is what we're doing. We're going to create this new tradition. We're going to do this new thing. We're going to do this. And then you're going to go to your dad's house. You're going to go to your mom's house, and you're going to have all new traditions over there. And, and really pumping it up so that the children aren't feeling where you're at emotionally, even though you're sad. You've got to help foster them past the sadness that they're feeling and going through too.
You know, one of the things that I often give as a tip is ask yourself, and this, I mean, anybody can do this across the board, is ask yourself, is this question I'm about to ask my kiddo or this decision I'm about to make coming from a place of fear, or is it coming from a place of what's most beneficial to my kid? And oftentimes it's so unintentional, but oftentimes we do the thing that's not the most beneficial, because we really want to calm down our own fear of like the potential outcome, or, you know, whatever it is that we have going on. And so just kind of giving yourself that check-in, and then, you know, working your way from there, and then saying, okay, well, what do I have to do to take care of me? And what would be most beneficial? And a lot of times, unless there's, like, you know, Teresa said, unless there's a legitimate, you know, concern for safety, oftentimes the most beneficial thing is to collaborate in some way with the other partner and make sure that, you know, all of that is going on. But I would love to hear from Nancy.
Yes, you've been very quiet, Nancy. Come in.
I'm taking it all in because, you know, I feel really blessed. And I think part of it is my outlook on my divorce. So I left, you know, I have an 11-year-old daughter. This was 3 years ago now that I left. And we have my ex-husband and I have a really beautiful relationship, because I talk to my daughter every day. Like, even when she's not with me, you know, it's 1 week on, 1 week off. And him and we've always communicated really well on the important things when it came to her. And we parent the same style. You know, I know that she's safe. I know she can call me at any time. If she's like, hey, Dad, you know, Dad doesn't understand, can I call you? And she'll call me on the weeks when she's with him. And, you know, I feel really blessed to hear, you know, from the guys I coach, you know, how their relationships are so volatile. And it just breaks my heart, because I think we forget that we have kids and how it's impacting them. And I know, Dr. Victoria, you probably know this very well. And for me, the way I healed was I had to allow myself to grieve, you know, because I had to let go. It was something, we've been together 17 years. You can imagine, like, 17 years is a lot of memories. And I had to let myself grieve. And then when my daughter saw that I was sad, we would talk about it. And then she's like, well, Mom, I'm sad too. And I'm like, you know what? It's okay. It's not going to last forever. And just really allowing her to feel what she's feeling, and allow myself to be vulnerable, not so much like put all my shit on her, but allow myself to be vulnerable and see that I'm sad too. And that's okay. Like, we're going to start new traditions. You know, he has a girlfriend and she's great. I'm like, is she treating you, you know, with respect and love? And that's what I care about. He's happy. It's a blended family over on that side. And so it's really beautiful. And I feel so blessed because it works for us, you know. And so getting through it was another story, you know, with kids and just being alone. There was a holiday where I was alone, and I had to kind of reflect on, okay, I get to do what I want now. Like Teresa was saying, you know, it's like, now it's my turn to do whatever I want, whenever I want, however I want. And it's almost like you get a new opportunity to do it over again, you know, on your terms. So that's my take on the holidays. It is difficult to be alone. I was sad, and just a lot of self-reflection and a lot of limiting beliefs of, did I do the right thing? You know, did I, you know, I get to talk to him, and sometimes I'm like, did I do the right thing? You know, was this the best? But yeah, it was ultimately the best.
Yeah. I love that. And I think that you hit a great point that we hadn't talked about yet before today, which is to let yourself feel the feelings, right? We've given a lot of tips on how to self-care and kind of just how to get past it, if you will, and, you know, get over it and, you know, enjoy the holidays. But I think it is important to feel the feelings and to understand. And I think Dr. Grinman can talk about this, to allow your children to feel the feelings. And Nancy, you said that, you know, you talk to your daughter about it, and I think, and that's great. But just for me as a family law attorney and as a divorce coach, my caution is to any viewers who are listening, is that you're talking about the emotions that you're feeling, and not talking with your children about the other person about the terms of the divorce or about what happened in the relationship, but you're just talking about the emotions and explaining the emotions, and it's okay to feel those and allowing them to feel that. So
Thank you. Yeah, it's respect across all, like, so, respect for everyone across the board. There's no, bad talking about her dad, or, I want, she has a great relationship with her father. I want it to stay that way. He's a great guy. He's just not the guy for me. So thank you for clarifying that, because yeah, it's about the emotions, not about throwing dirt to the other person.
And I think too, in the context of the holidays, right? So we're talking in a couple of days now, there's going to be Christmas. And for a lot of people, that might mean when their kids come back from their ex's house, or, their significant, that the soon to be ex, that Christmas didn't look the same and the kids are disappointed and frustrated.
Mm.
And so I recall those moments and recall therapy, where the therapist said, it is not your job to buffer the choices that your soon to be ex-husband is making, right? Like, it's not your job to like make up for it. So if he gave him like nothing for Christmas, it doesn't mean that it's your job to go out and buy him 3 times the amount of gifts. It means that it's your job to say, I'm sorry that you're feeling hurt. I know it. I know that your father loves you and you may not feel it right now. You know what I mean? Like, to really like acknowledge and validate and not try to compensate.
And what about on the flip side of that? Anybody up for answering into the question, what if you're the parent who can't give the kids a great Christmas, and now they've come home from the other parent's house and, oh my God, I got every gaming system under the sun, and I got this and I got that, and I'm so wonderful and I loved it over there. And you're going to be very emotional over that because you did what you could and you gave what you could to your children. So what tips or advice do any of you have for that parent that's where their children are coming back home so excited about how amazing their Christmas was with the other parent and dealing with that emotion that they're going to be going through?
I was just thinking that as Teresa was sharing, and then Siobhan, you popped in. On either end, I'm hearing guilt and shame just flying out. And give yourself that time to feel that guilt and shame. Those are feelings that we need to feel. At the same time, different is different. It's going to be different, and to really nix that guilt, because the guilt has us do a lot of different things. It has us overcompensate. It has us badmouth. It has us feel bad feelings. It has us get into this energy that's very low. It has us, think about all the ways that we're not good enough, or that person is not good enough, and that those situations, and we create things that are not real.
Mm-hmm.
Where the funny thing about kids is that kids don't have a problem with feeling feelings. In fact, they cry, they tell you how they feel. It's when we create the problem around sharing we as adults, create a problem around sharing feelings, making meaning of feelings. I'm so distracted by whoever's walking. It's like it's so funny. Zoom, right? But so with kids, it's like, it's cool if you feel what you feel, and and they want to talk about it. It's not a problem for them. It becomes a problem when they feel the energy of us trying to hide it, or they feel they feel the energy of us trying to say, like, don't feel that, or feel this instead, or so with kids, it's just different is different, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. We make meaning of it.
And so what did any of you do? Sorry, I have some feedback coming from somewhere. To take care of yourself with those emotions. So how did you self-care? How did you help yourself get through those feelings and get through the guilt and the sadness or anything like that you needed to get through? For me, it was I'm a music person. So for me, I got lost in my music, right? So I listened to music and those songs that worked me through those emotions, or that pumped me up and got me through it. I love massages. So I did, a lot of massages and pedicures, and those are things that I did for self-care. But what about all three of you? What advice and tips do you have for anyone for what they can do to help get through those emotions, or help alleviate some of that guilt and get past that guilt, and then also get past their sadness?
So I wanted to just lightly touch on the previous question where, you know, if you think back to when you were a kid, do you remember any of the toys you got?
Yes.
Only a few. Yeah,
Like,
but nothing major. Yeah.
Right? Like
Yeah.
I can't really remember. What I remember were experiences. And so for those parents that can't afford, say, you know, the divorce has depleted their bank account or whatever it is really focusing and letting their children know that they're going to have a beautiful experience with them, because those are the things I remember. We were broke. I grew up in the ghetto in LA, and we didn't have a lot of money. There was one Christmas I do remember where my parents were like, you know, we don't have a lot of money to give you gifts. I think they gave me something little. And then we went on this amazing camping trip. And I remember like the rocks, skipping the rocks and doing all this. That's what I remember. So I think for parents who are struggling financially, I think whether it's taking your kid to the park and playing with them organically and not worrying about work and just being fully present, I think that could be the biggest gift you could give your child, you know. And as far as self-care, for me, it's running with music, without music. It's just like just going like 100%, getting all the stuff out of my body, all the emotions, all the, you know, everything. So that's my self-care. I'm a runner. I love to just put my shoes on and go when I'm having a really hard time or something's coming up. So
I love that.
We did with the kids, to your point, Nancy, we started, because in the blended family, it's so difficult, right? Because you have each set of kids, his kids, my kids, and then the one together who's a biological sibling to all of them. You know, it's not fair, this one got this and I didn't get that, and you know, they already have their own, like, which would be normal in any household, right? But it's just amplified in a blended family. So we started also incorporating just silly fun games. I know Siobhan and I talked about the other day, we do like a gingerbread competition that they love. And then someone shared with us, I forget what it's called, but we started doing it, and it is like everybody's favorite, where we buy like a box of Pop-Tarts or something, like Rice Krispie Treats, big box from Costco that we normally wouldn't buy, and we wrap it with lottery tickets or like a $5 gift card in between each layer, and we wrap it like 9 times. You use the oven mitts and the dice, you know what I mean? Like, and you roll the dice and you pass it around the room and everyone's trying to open it, and that becomes like fun moments, you know, just how fun can you make it? How can you tap into that fun energy with them?
yeah, totally. That's beautiful. They'll remember that forever.
Yes. Amazing, ladies. And so we have actually been going for over 30 minutes, I think now, a much longer time. But this is such great information. And so for the blended families, Teresa, you just talked about it a little bit on things that you can do, but I'd like to, if we can give just a couple of quick tips then for anything else that you might for the blended family side of things and how to work through that. If there's anything else.
I can tell you that, well, Dr. Victoria can probably confirm this. They tell you it takes 7 years to blend a family.
Wow.
And it is not a lie. We're definitely on the other side of that, but we have glimpses, right? We have learned to be much more clear in our expectations about what's going to happen. For example, if we're having an event at the house, my husband and I have to learn how to ask more questions of each other. Like, what does that mean? How many people are going to be here? Okay, your daughter's bringing friends. How many friends is that? Right? Like all of those like basic things, we have learned that the hard way, that it creates like an explosion if you're not that detailed and upfront. And then also, we've learned that sitting down with all of them, like, this is what our family expectations are, and this is what the consequences of some of those expectations are, and this is what, you know, like, if we lay it out all together, even though you struggle still with it doesn't seem fair to this one or that one, but still treating them all the same is what you'd be doing for any family, any regular family unit, whether you were divorced or not, right? You'd be doing it all together and yelling at all of them, right? You didn't do the dishes to all of them,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
And so I have one more question onto the blended family, and I know that we're running over on time. So I know that some of you have to run, and so if you have to drop off, that's fine. But I just think that this is such important points. And so, and especially for Teresa, as I don't know if it applies to anybody else that we have on the show, but if it does, then please feel free to answer. But how do you treat the on the years? Obviously, I don't know if you guys alternate Christmas or how you do it on the blended family side, but as you said, you have the his, hers, and the ours. What do you do on the ours on the years that the other two are with the his and the hers? So does your child go with one of the other ones and alternate, or does that child stay home and you do something special with them? How does your blended family work with that? And then if any of you have any advice for that for other families too on how to do that,
That
then
was
we can
very
go there.
challenging because I had to change my expectations of what Christmas Day would look like, even when it was our holiday. Because that, even though it was our holiday, my husband and his ex-wife have an agreement. So even though they would be with us, they would leave. So we would still only get them for a few hours. And that felt so wrong. And I fought it for years. Like, why can't I have a holiday? Right. And so we do things like if it's not our holiday and they're not all going to be there, we will celebrate like Christmas on another day, whether it's Christmas Eve or the day after Christmas or the Sunday before. And do it all together. And then we would still, with our daughter who's ours, would still have Christmas morning with her.
I kid you not, you sound like people who have blended families are like Gumby flexible.
Yeah, 100%. 100%, right?
And I love what you said in terms of limiting and also changing your expectations. I think what you're doing is great. And I think it looks different for different families. I think that's really important to remember that no one family has the same type of thing going on with the same circumstances. And when you think about a blended family, you're juggling an incredible amount of stuff. And so being compassionate with yourself. And I have 2 tips, and maybe these weren't mentioned, and so I'll just share. One is when you're part of a blended family and you have their kids, your kids, it's like more than a step parent kind of role. And, and then you have your own kids. But always find opportunities to switch off roles where you can be the fun one and not the disciplinarian all the time. Because when you have, when it's their kids and then you're not their biological parent and then they don't want to listen and it's a mess, it feels like a mess. You want to make sure that you have this communication around, like, you're the disciplinarian for your kiddos. I'm going to be the fun one because I need to like really, really pump up those marbles in that jar so I can use them when I do need to step in and say, hey, like, this was the rule, this is the agreement, because that's the number one thing that I find a lot is, they don't have those marbles in that jar for when you need them. And you need to be able to have that rapport and relationship. And the second is to make sure that you really do prioritize your relationship with your partner. Because with a blended family or a family where you have step parents, you have like a very limited window to actually get to know one another differently than if you don't have kids, right? So just making sure to, like Teresa said and Siobhan said and Nancy, just communicate and never assume that you know what the other person means when they say there's a gathering at the house, Yeah.
And I think for me too, is my biggest lesson was not forcing my daughter to like him, even though I know how amazing he is. It's forcing her to like my boyfriend, or not even just forcing, but like her seeing him like I do. It's like, it's a process. Like you said, 7 years. Oh my God. You know, it's going to be a process, and just let her do it on her terms. Let her get to know him, and, you know, have them, you know, if she's open to spending time together, just her and him too, is what has worked for our family. And as far as holidays, so my ex-husband gets her on Christmas Eve, which was his big thing with his family, thankfully, and then I get her on Christmas Day. So it's a beautiful blend of that. So it works. And I just have one, so it makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah, I was in the same boat. Just one is all I had.
Yeah.
So yeah.
One
So
and done.
all right. All right. Amazing, ladies. And so thank you for being here and for taking the time. And I think that and hope that we brought some really valuable insight and tips to anybody that is listening and watching. And so feel free, ladies, to go ahead and state your contact information. Mine is posted right there beside my name. So I will refrain from giving my contact information since it's there. But Nancy and Dr. Victoria, if you guys feel free to give your contact information. If somebody wants to reach out to you, how can they reach you?
So you can find me on Facebook at Manifest with Nancy, and all my information's on there on Facebook.
I love that. And for me, my website is there. If anyone's just listening, it's growingkindminds.com. And on Facebook, you can also find me under growingkindminds.com. And under LinkedIn, it's just Victoria Grinman. And I'm happy to talk with anyone that reaches out, see how I can help.
Amazing. And Teresa, yours is there too. I know like mine is, but if you want to state your information in case anybody's just listening.
On the screen, Teresa Trigas-Pfeferle. If you Google me, say Teresa Trigas-Pfeferle, Realtor, New Jersey, I'll come up. All of my contact information will be there. And also I do real estate consulting anywhere in the world.
All right.
Incredible.
All right. Thank you, ladies. And as we mentioned, and as we wrapped up the last show, I will say it again, that we can't stress enough how important it is to have an amazing tribe of people in your circle when you're going through this. You're not alone. There are people out there for you. And if you don't have a tribe, that is not true. You do, because we are here for you and we are willing to be your tribe. So please reach out to us if you need someone while you're going through this time, because we are here for you. So.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, ladies.
Amazing.
Thanks, ladies.